Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar about modern bank reconciliation in finance. We thought about having this webinar mostly because with every new version update, you see lots of features related to bank reconciliation. A little improvement here, a little improvement there, and there is the separate feature for modern bank reconciliation. So it ultimately felt like, okay, what is it all about? What is it that Microsoft is doing? So we thought that we will use this opportunity to walk you through the changes that Microsoft introduced and talk a little bit about what's next on the horizon for the modern bank reconciliation. It is an educational session, so you will learn what it can do, and you will make a decision if that makes sense for your business to do this. Let's start with the welcome slide, where I talk about some technical details. If you've been on our webinars, you know that if you have any questions during this presentation, you can use a Q&A window, and I will answer your questions at the end of my webinar. There is a closed captioning that is available by selecting CC button at the bottom right corner of your media player screen. You can expand, minimize, and move each of the window panes displayed on your screen if you need to. And we're recording this presentation, and we will send out a link to the recording after the webinar. Today it's going to be just me. My name is Katya Zuyevska. I'm a lead consultant at the Client Care. And this is our agenda for today. We will start by talking about the modern bank reconciliation feature. What are the prerequisites? We will touch base on how you can import the bank statement. What changed in the matching rules? I will show you the changes in navigation and user interface. I will demonstrate how customer and vendor payments are now integrated into the bank reconciliation. What happened with the updated voucher postings? We will touch base on the bank reconciliation reports, and I will talk about what Microsoft is planning on doing in the future releases. And after that, I will open the floor for the Q&A sessions. I would say 99% of my session is going to be doing demo in the system. So these are my beginning slides. And now I'm going to switch to the system, to our demo environment, and start showing you slides there. Let me start doing this. Okay. You should be able to see my Contoso environment now, and I will start talking about the feature overview. Basically, okay, there is something new happening with the modern bank rec. Like, what am I doing? What am I turning? What I'm configuring? Like, well, what is happening? So you will start by turning on the feature in the feature management. You will do the find feature, you will switch to all, and you will do the modern, let's do that, modern bank reconciliation. I have this feature on, but you would need to go and enable that in your environment. It is not on by default. Right now, this is the choice. I don't know if Microsoft is going to make this one of the features that is on by default. I guess we will wait and see. Right now, you do need to turn this on. And I do need to remind everyone that we are talking about version 41, 10.041, because this is the version where this feature is out of preview state. In the previous versions like 39 and 40, that feature is in preview, and once you're in 41, it is available to enable in production. You enable the feature, and then you will start having additional functionality in various aspects of the advanced bank reconciliation. Just a quick reminder for everyone on this call, modern bank reconciliation feature is applicable to the advanced bank reconciliation only, right? Like just on a quick, super high level, you can reconcile bank accounts in D365 in two ways. You can do it in a manual reconciliation where you manually select and check lines on your bank statement, like the bank transactions that match your bank statement, and you're basically manually telling the system, reconciled, matched. So you do this work for the system. Versus the advanced bank reconciliation, this is where you can predefine some filters that will help the system find transactions and match them for you. And then you will just review it and complete the reconciliation. So modern bank reconciliation is an add-on on the advanced bank reconciliation. To me, this is an important point because I've seen and I worked with clients who might be already on the advanced bank reconciliation, and then the switch is going to be easy for you. If you're not on advanced bank reconciliation, but you do manual bank rec, that's great already because you've been reconciling your bank transactions in the system. And then we can just work through turning on the advanced bank reconciliation and see how it can be configured. But I also had clients who actually would do a reconciliation outside of the system in Excel spreadsheet or like some additional files where they get the data from the bank. And that is also possible. We can also get you there from that state into advanced bank reconciliation. It would just require a little bit extra prep work. So summary, modern bank reconciliation is an add-on on the advanced bank reconciliation. Once you turn on the feature, the next step would be to go back to your bank account. Remember, the reconciliation is configured per bank account. So some of them can be manual, some of them can be advanced bank. It really depends on how you're reconciling and how much of activity you have in a bank account. So this is my demo bank account that I pre-created for this specific webinar. And what matters is on the reconciliation tab, right, you have to have advanced bank reconciliation toggle on. And remember, it's one of those, like once it's on, you can't turn it off. So you are using advanced bank reconciliation on this account. What changed, because I believe up to probably this part, it's all how you normally would have it, but I believe these additional filters and additional fields are new and they are related to the modern bank reconciliation. They are part of the new functionality where you can match customer payment journal, vendor payment journal, where you can also configure reports for bank statements. If you use a print bank statement report, now there is an electronic reporting that you can download from Microsoft repository and use that because it will be more user-friendly versus what the other one is. It ultimately will have the same information of the number of the transactions, but it will just look better, I would say. So you can configure those things if you're going to use this functionality, and that's going to be an if that we will touch base on. So this is one of the prerequisites, because if you are planning on using some of the new functionality, you do need to do some default setups on the bank account. And then for those of you who are using advanced bank reconciliation right now, and you want to turn on the feature, and you're wondering like, well, how is this going to work with what I used to have versus what I'm going to have now, right? It's all ultimately this whole automatic reconciliation is being driven by the matching rules. So there are changes to the matching rules. Does that mean that I need to reconfigure everything now, or I need to change everything now? Basically, like how much work I need to do. And the answer to that is there is some changes that you have to do, but Microsoft made it easy for you. So in the cash and bank management, under setup, under advanced bank reconciliation setup, now you have a form called advanced bank reconciliation data upgrade. This is for those who are using advanced bank reconciliation, but are not doing modern bank rec. And this is a wizard that you will just go through, and the system will help you and guide you how to make a switch. It basically tells you like, hey, you start doing modern bank reconciliation, and it kind of like outlines what happens here. And ultimately what matters is if you do advanced bank reconciliation, that you're probably familiar with the concept, the matching rule with type mark new transaction. The idea behind that, like, well, I have a bank fee that I see on my bank statement, but I haven't had a chance to record this in D365 yet. So the functionality will allow you to mark that transaction from the bank statement and post a general journal entry, just voucher entry in your system for you. And that was like mark new transactions. Now Microsoft is retiring that functionality and replacing it with what's called a generate voucher. So that's why they introduced the wizard that you will just walk through to upgrade some transactions. So that it is important to remember, if you're using advanced bank rec and if you like the modern bank rec, you want to start doing this, we will have to go through this upgrade wizard and then move on. Okay, so those would be our prerequisites in terms of what you have to do before you start. And obviously later we will start talking about the matching rules, because I do want to touch base on those in more details. I will touch base on the ways to import statements. What changed there? What do we have there? Again, as a recap, you typically, if you do advanced bank reconciliation, it means that you downloaded a BI2 format from the electronic reporting repository of Microsoft. And now you used to have to import that statement manually, basically to get the bank statement in your system, and then you will start working with the imported data. Microsoft enhanced that approach, and you can still do that, but you also nowadays can import statements from a SharePoint folder, and you can do this as a batch. Some clients who really want to have it truly automated, you can expand that on building a Power Automate flow, potentially, to, depending on how you get your statements into the system, like at the beginning, do you get it as an email? Do you download or something? If it comes to you as an email, potentially the Power Automate can grab that statement from your email and then place it in the SharePoint folder, and then the standard process will pick it up as a batch, and you will have the statements flowing into your system. That's another great upgrade, because now you don't have to deal with the manual files. You still can if you want to, but there is a possibility. And I do want to mention that for the US, again, we are still dealing with the same formats. BI2 format, that's the Microsoft format for the US. European countries, they use a slightly different formats. But now Microsoft also introduced in, I believe in version 40, there are data entities that you can import your bank statements through data entities Excel ultimately, right? You would have data entities Excel format, you will populate it with your data, and you will push it through the data management import into the system. There are two data entities, one for the bank statement header and one for the bank statement lines. So if you don't have a BI2 format, or maybe you have a CSV format only, so that would be slightly more easier to convert into Excel, you can work with the data entities to get your data in. And the last resort, which probably is not feasible for the majority of you, but still I do want to mention this, but that's what I'm doing in my demo, is just a manual bank statement entry. I created my bank statement just by manually keying it in, which is obviously for the demo, I have like 5-6 lines, but as soon as you start doing more than that, the import or the automation would work greatly. Okay, so these are the topics about what are the prerequisites, how we import, what are the ways to import. And now let's talk about what changed. So the majority of the changes are in the matching rules. So I will navigate to the cash and bank management. Under setup, we have advanced bank reconciliation setup folder, right? So no changes here. And just as a reminder, I'm not going to explain how the advanced bank reconciliation works. Really, the focus for today's session is what changed. So when you go to the reconciliation matching rules, this is the place where you define How do you want the system to handle your transactions? How do you want the system to find a transaction from your bank statement that you got into the system with what you have in the system? And is there a way to deal with that if you don't have transactions in your system just yet? Maybe you didn't know about this. Maybe you haven't had a chance to enter them. Like, now what, right? So let's talk about, I will click new and just talk about the action, because this is where the majority of the changes are. You would start right by entering a name and the detailed description, but the action selection will drive the functionality that you want the system to do for you. And as you see, match with bank documents, that's been around, so that's not really a change. Clear reversal statement lines, I believe that's also the old one. So mark new transactions, as I mentioned, yes, it is still there because there are a lot of clients who are on advanced bank reconciliation and not using the modern bank rec. But as soon as you start doing the modern bank rec, the mark new transactions gets replaced with the generate voucher. It is ultimately the same concept, the same logic, how it would work, just layout will be slightly different. And the newest changes would be generate customer payment, vendor payment, generate voucher, settle customer invoice. And I will just quickly mention that the clear reversal bank transactions are also here. I will talk about match with bank document because I really like the option of what Microsoft introduced in terms of like choose matching type. We used to have limited numbers of matching types, like one-to-one, and I believe one-to-many were the original ones, and they were good, but sometimes it was a bit of a struggle to set up a rule that would truly capture everything and it would truly be an automation without additional hiccups or falling out. So the fact that Microsoft introduced many-to-one and many-to-many, these are great additions. And when we talk about one-to-one or many-to-many, like many-to-many what, right? It's ultimately many transactions in the bank statement comparing to many transactions in the D365 bank transactions, right? Like you're comparing these two and you're defining the parameters on how you want the system to find things for you. Once you make a selection of whatever you're going to configure, the screen that you work with will change. So I will just do a quick one to show you how the change will look like, and then we will start going through some of these action items and the bank statements and how it will look like. So let's say I'm using the settle customer invoice. You will have a pop-up saying like, do you want to proceed? Yep, I do. So the whole screen changed, and now I have different steps that I need to do to be able to configure my form. What I'm going to do right now, I will delete this because I don't want to proceed with that. I do want to show you my bank statement that I entered. I want to touch base on the user interface and navigation, and then I will be switching between the bank statement and the matching rules. So we talk about the setup, reconciliation, and the actual effect, what happens. So the bank statements, the navigation is still the same. So cash and bank management, bank statement reconciliation folder, bank accounts are here. These are my bank statements. So if you do import, the button is still there. So no changes on this side just yet. If you do the automation import, great. If you do it like me manually, basically I created this statement ID 5, and this is what we've been working with today. When I click on the statement ID, so if you work with the bank reconciliation, you will know that visually it's like, okay, this is different. I know that it used to be like a little bit different, and now it's changed. So first of all, here is the list on the left-hand side. Here's the list of my bank statements and the status of them. You can keep this or you can make it go away. So I would want to make it go away. We would have a bank statement header, right? So that also would be important if you do the Excel import. So you will know what information needs to go to the header and what information needs to go to the lines. And then we used to have at the bottom like bank statement line details. So those line details are now living here. If you click on this little question, little information mark, you will have a related information about bank statement details. I have the latest bank statement information as well, and I have details about payments. So bank statement details now live not at the bottom of the screen, but on the side. The change, I would say, the information that you put into bank statement and header and lines is pretty much the same. I will make these go away to have a little bit more room. However, there is a toggle for reversals, and we will talk about this when we go back to the matching rules, because there are some matching rules that will help you clear reversal transactions. And if you do the import or you import through Excel, you would need to make sure that those reversals are marked as the reversal. The concept is the same. You have the opening balance, you have your lines, you have your information, how much information you can enter or get out of your bank, whatever they provide. Header, I would say, didn't change much. Then what you used to do, you used to validate and confirm, and I realized that nowadays I just can go ahead and confirm it right away. And when I confirm it, I get this new thing that comes up, right? These little tiles that summarizes what happens with my statement as of right now. I have a total 5 lines. I have 5 unmatched transactions, and it shows me what are my unmatched transactions. I have, again, matched lines that I can just click. So it's a nice visual representation of your current status, where you are. I really like, while I was testing this, I really like this related worksheet at the bottom, because this is one of the navigation changes. If you remember working with the advanced bank statement process, you would import a bank statement, you will validate, confirm it, and then you would need to exit that bank statement form and go into related into a bank reconciliation to start it from there, right? So you exit the form, you enter a new form. Now you don't need to do this. You can get into reconciliation worksheet basically from here. You would use a button reconcile in the worksheet, and I will click on that. And the reason why I'm getting inside the worksheet already is because I was prepping for this call and I already have a sheet created. But normally, let me just use the standard paths: cash and bank management, bank statement reconciliation, bank reconciliation. You still need to click new button, create a new record for your reconciliation worksheet, and then go into the worksheet to open this up. And once you have this step created, then you can do what I'm showing, right? Like what I have in my statement ID, I can just quickly jump back and forth. Okay, so this is one of the changes. Once you are in the worksheet, it changed as well. And at the beginning, you're like, okay, like what is it that I'm seeing? Like what's happening here? It's really nice in terms of like overall view. You have the bank account overview with like your quick super summary of where you stand in terms of ending balance, matched, unmatched transactions, what's your difference. And then Microsoft changed. You used to have unmatched and matched transactions on the same screen. Now there are 2 different tabs, which helps with the navigation and just visual understanding. What is it that you're dealing with? It used to be, in my opinion, quite difficult form to kind of like even wrap your head around. What are you seeing? What are you doing? The whole concept between sort of like having 2 parts of the screen with the bank statement, which is the bank statement from your actual bank, and the bank transactions, which would be D365 bank, is still here, because you do need to see them both, and you do need to compare them both and interact with them by matching, unmatching, doing whatever you're doing. So it's here, but matched, unmatched now live in 2 different tabs. You have a quick little summary here. You have additional buttons that we will talk about: generate payment voucher, payment journal, and generate voucher. I do want to point out that one of the features that Microsoft has been kind of like slowly releasing, like, okay, feature here, feature there, feature there, it was for filters. When you click on open filters, now you have this nice way to actually filter pretty much anything that you want. because I remember it used to be it used to be just a standard filter, right, without all these details, and sometimes it was challenging to create multiple filter selection to get the data that you need. So now it works on any of those. And the top buttons, I believe they did stay the same. And if I click on the form, I can also see the bank statement details if I need to bring this in. Okay, so this is the brief overview of the navigation and user interface major changes. And you will see once I start working with the system, the details of like what I match, what I don't match, how much I do this. This information in the middle of the screen will get updated as well. Okay, so now let's talk about the matching rules, and we will see the matching rules in action. I'm going to switch back to my reconciliation matching rules, and we will start with the many-to-many that I just wanted you to see to kind of like understand if that would make sense to incorporate in your reconciliation. I already created that, so I will deactivate and edit this so we can see what fields are there. But my idea was I'm going to use the old action, existing action, match with bank document, but I'm going to use a matching type many-to-many. This is a common scenario where, let's say, you process ACH payments, and in your mind, you processed on Friday, $1 million went out. You have, in your mind, you should have one line on your bank transactions, like actual bank transactions, and you will have like, I don't know, 50,000 lines on your bank, D365 bank. But in reality, the way how bank might process it, it might be still $1 million, but it will be like 250 here, one line, 750 another line. So it might not be one line specifically. So I think many-to-many would be a great tool to work with your ACH transactions or wires if you process them in bulk, because you will be able to really work through and set this up nicely. And one-to-one usually is a great example for the check payments. So when you create many-to-many or any of these action items, your screen changes. What I like about the many-to-many is now you have the grouping conditions. The logic is to group transactions by a condition. And you would define a condition on a bank statement line, something that you imported into your system. So in my example, the way how I configure this, I'm grouping this by a trading party. And I think the good way would be to go back to, let me have a bank statement here so I can show you what is the place, where did I do that. So that would depend on your bank. What information are you getting from your bank? If you're getting these details, I would imagine usually trading parties would be the information that you can get. So here is my trading party where I define the name of my customer or vendor. So define the grouping condition for the bank statement line by trading party. Please group those. And then you can switch to the bank transaction line. Now this is D365 bank transactions. And I'm grouping this as well by the related party name. Parties would be your customer vendor names. Once I'm done with the grouping, and you can continue your grouping because you can have multiple conditions here. You will just need to go through the field labels to see what makes sense for you, again, depending on what you get from your bank. Once you define that, you can go ahead and move to the matching rule to tell the system, okay, I group this, now what? Please match it by amount. And you can be more restrictive in terms of transaction type. Maybe you can match by a payment reference. There is an option to add more to see if you can add additional criterias. And then this is an optional. You can do the statement lines to match, to run matching rule against. I don't do that. In my scenario, that would be enough. I'm afraid I will have to probably delete this and re-enter that. Related party name. Perfect. Now I'm going to save. Don't forget to activate the rule. Once you activate, once the rule is active, it is available for selection and it is available to run. So let's test that. Let me show you what I have on my bank statement. I have these two lines. This is my vendor. I'm paying my vendor on two. I'm pretending that this is my ACH transaction. So I have a trading party. I have two lines of the payments. And if I go back to my worksheet, basically the idea is to match these two lines with this 4 on my bank, D365 bank. Right, so that's the goal of my many-to-many. I paid 4 invoices and I want to match them to 2 bank lines. The concept of running matching rules is the same. You can define individual rules or you can run them as a set. So remember, like you don't have, I'm going to run all my matching rules on today's demo individually to show you the concept, but you can group them as a set and run them as a set. You will define priorities, which one runs first, and that can be automated. So I will click the usual button, run matching rules. This is my matching rule. Let me just reselect this to make sure that I'm still doing okay here. You can run it as a batch, which would be important when you do a set because it might take a while depending on the number of the transactions. And let's click OK. Okay, so that is a similar situation to what we typically have, right? Like the system will communicate with you and tell you what happened. So 2 statement lines have been matched, great. So now they're gone from my unmatched transactions. Again, that used to be the thing. Now you just need to switch tabs and go to the matched transactions and see, did I get what I expected to see? And it seems like, yes, it seems like I got my 2 lines that I matched with my 4 lines of the actual payments. What I like about this, it shows me my matching rule that was applied for this particular matching. So I know which one actually worked, which one was used, and I can have all my usual information that I see, related party, etc. So if I go back to my unmatched transaction, now I have some other transactions to work through. And again, on the matched transactions, if the matching was done incorrectly, the unmatched all button that you have nowadays, you can use that to unmatch them and bring them to unmatched transaction and maybe run the rule again if something is off. So this is the concept of many-to-many. Again, we have one-to-one, one-to-many, many-to-many, and I forgot many-to-one. I believe all of these guys together will really help with the automation of the reconciliation. It used to be not enough, but now with many-to-many, I'm personally excited. I think that's going to really make the reconciliation robust. Okay, let's talk briefly about the bank statement interest. I believe this is the one when I'm going to use a generate voucher, right? So I click new, I selected an action to generate voucher, which is, as a reminder, this is a replacement to mark as new transactions. It is the same concept ultimately. However, the setup is a slightly different, and I want you to see that. So you start by helping the system find the bank statement line. So which one? In my example, I'm going to use the transaction code 192. Let me switch to my bank statement. 192 transaction is a positive amount. So I believe in my mind, I'm testing the interest on my bank account balance. So I get paid to keep my money in the bank account. That's what I would like to have. And I do not have a transaction for that in the system in D365. So I want to find this by the code, but you have, again, I will click the line, you can select whatever is available in the bank statement information. So it might not be the transaction code, maybe it's a reference number, maybe it's a document number, whatever it makes sense for you, whatever information you have, use that. And on the voucher parameters, now you need to tell the system how are you going to handle this. The first change that kind of comes to mind immediately, the legal entity. You see, you can keep adding, and I will have a new choice of legal entities, which means that these rules can work globally. it does not mean that you can run a reconciliation from one company for every company. No, it's not that, because the bank transactions are company specific, legal entity specific, and you're reconciling legal entity specific. Maybe one day Microsoft will introduce that as well. As of right now, the reconciliation needs to be done in the company that you're working in. However, the rules will be, the rule forms is shared, so you can configure them once and use them through your other companies. Once you define the legal entity and you need to click save the form, it's one of those, right? Like you entered some in, things don't change, you need to click save. Once you click save, the financial details button become available. And this is where you can define the details of that voucher. How is it going to post? Where is it going to post? What's the accounting date, etc. So when we used to have mark as new, you would define the GL account on, I believe, a bank transaction type form. So now you can do it here in the matching rule. So that could be a nice segregation of duties between who is actually configuring the system versus who is running the bank reconciliation. You can define the accounting date. Because this is a rule, so the rule is meant to be set once and you kind of keep using this, you have different options for the dates that hopefully would work. You will define offset account number. You can put in a description that would be a voucher description, because this thing is not going to create you a journal. There will be no journal here. There will be just direct voucher booking to an account of your choice. If you're dealing with taxes, there will be an option to select taxes, and the dimensions will show up on the account. I'm going to cancel that and activate my rule to be able to run it. So let's go back to my worksheet. I will switch to unmatched transactions. And now the goal is to move these $5 to the matched transaction. So let me close this and run the matching rule for bank balance interest and click OK. Okay, so perfect, it got moved. Let's see what happens here. And if I select this line, I have a voucher. I can click the button, and the reason why I don't see this, let me duplicate this, is because in this demo environment, I need to go and move my postings, my general ledger. Let me do this just a second. Subledger journal entries not yet transferred. Transfer now. Okay, this is gone. Back to the voucher, refresh. I refreshed, and now I have my bookings directly to the account. This is the bank account and the offset account that I defined, and it's being matched. So it is important to note that, let me, go back. Voucher, I need to go back to my reconciliation worksheet. The posting already happened, right? You're still in the process of reconciling, but you have a GL posting that happened in the system once you click that. It is important to note that the functionality of running this, like generate voucher, can be done in 2 steps, and the same concept will apply to customers and vendor payment journals. You can do them as a matching rule, where you call the matching rule and you say, please run this and match whatever you can find. Or alternatively, you can do either or, and it's a business choice. And I would say it's also possibly a question of potentially segregation of duties, ultimately who defines the offset account. You can do the same thing when you click generate voucher button here. You can not run the matching rule. You can just click the generate voucher. It will open up a menu item where you can say, like, okay, you're going to work with this statement line. What are the details that you want to enter? Like what I'm showing on my screen makes sense, right? We just looked at that when we looked at the matching rule setup. It's the same concept. What is my booking date? What is my offset account? What happens with my taxes? And what do I do with the financial dimensions? The difference is that the person who works through the bank reconciliation will have to populate this information. And that possibly is okay. for some of you and possibly is not okay for some of you. It depends on your scenario, but I do want to point out that you can run it in two ways, and it depends on what you want to do. The thing that I like about this, and I guess the matching rule works as well, it's just that you would need to do your testing. The counting date here will just open up a calendar and you can decide to what date you're booking this, versus the matching rule, because it's a predefined setup and you kind of set it and forget it. The dates where, if you remember, it was a booking date, it was some other choices, and then the last day of the week, the last day of the month, etc. So it's trying to be specific for a period, and you can use that versus this way of a calendar. Once I click OK, there will be the same concept. It will get moved to matched transactions, and I will have a posting effect on my trial balance right away. Okay, so that is the generate voucher concept. I'm going to now talk about the most exciting part, about customers and vendor payments journal. So let's go back to the matching rules, and now let's talk about, let's do the most interesting one, the customer settlement. So this is not activated yet because I was looking at this, so I can show you the selection. This is a part of the modern bank reconciliation. You get this functionality with the modern bank reconciliation. And if you remember, on the bank account, if you want to do this, if you want to work with your customers and vendors, you will need to provide the customer payment journal ID on the bank account setup and the vendor payment journal name, or ID name, on the bank account setup as well. So the system knows what to use. So what is going to happen here, high level? Basically, the idea is you receive a payment at your bank account from your customer, but you have not recorded the customer payment journal just yet. So this functionality will allow you to record a journal, post that journal, and reconcile those transactions and settle them all at the same time. So basically, one-stop shop. You got everything, what's happening. As always with Microsoft, right? That sounds exciting. It sounds like, wow, look at that. We can do all of that. There is always however. So we will talk about howevers once we get there. What happens when you call the settle customer invoices, right? So your selection, your criteria for your choices change. And now you need to define, like, how do you want the system to find transactions? How do you want them to identify customer accounts, and how the matching needs to happen? So on the bank statement lines, I'm basically searching by the transaction code and the name of the party. You can define this slightly differently, depends on what you have, right? So just visually to show you, in my mind, I have two payments that I received from my customers. I have one payment for $15 and one payment for $5,000. I have two different scenarios for the customers, so that's why we'll use one of those transactions to run my rule. If I go back to my matching rule, so okay, now the system knows how to find my bank statement lines. Let's see what I can do with match open invoices. I'm saying that please find by customer name versus trading party on the bank statement. And you can have multiple choices, right? Like you need to go through these options to see which ones make sense. There is invoice number, there is a customer account, there's a currency. There are different ways how you can find that. In my scenario, just to show you the concept of the functionality, customer name equals trading party. And then I'm going to talk about the customer payment journal parameters. It's the same concept. You specify the legal entity, which one is it going to work for. You click Save button to have financial details enabled. And then on the financial details enabled, you have options to provide some information. You can define the method of payment. You talk about the booking dates. Basically, again, what is the date? Any default transactions, and you have choices for financial dimensions. This time choices include account and offset account. I have my dimensions defaulted on my customer and the bank account, so I will just use that, but potentially you can just flip and define that. Let me So that would be the setup for settle customer invoices. Again, what's going to happen? I don't have the customer payment journal for the invoices that I'm going to test. I obviously don't have them settled yet. I'm going to use this rule and see what's going to happen with this information. Let me go back. I activated that. Let me go back to the worksheet and let's do the $15 because I think that would make it would be quite visual of when you run this. Let me show you before I start running this through the matching rule. I will show you probably the generate payment journal option differently. You can do, again, you can do the run matching rule. I can select my customer settlement and the rule will run and it will call the matching rule, all the setups from there. However, this time I want to do it differently and I want to show you how to generate payment journal will work. You can do either or, right? Generate payment journal. Payment type, I have a customer payment. When I do it from this place, right? When I do from generate payment journal, I have to provide the customer name. And same concept will apply to the vendor payment journal. You will have to select the customer account versus the matching rule, which will allow you to not do that. You, depending on your rule, the system needs to find you, the customer itself. So here, let's just go with that so you understand the idea. I need to do the demo customer. This is my information. Method of payment, if I have to. Booking date, description, I can enter the description. My dimensions got populated. So far, so good. And I can do the generate payment, and then I can settle transactions. So if you think about this, when you process a customer payment journal regularly, normally, right, you would record the payment, you will post the journal after it got approved, everything. So at the time of posting, the system will record the money coming in into your D365 bank. It will also settle the transactions for you. You have these two steps merging into one. That's why a lot of times this is kind of like, yeah, absolutely, this needs to happen. What do you mean I'm talking about two different steps, right? Like, why is it two different steps? But in reality, for the system, there are two different steps. So you need to have a payment to be able to apply to a settlement. Right, so if I click generate payment, I will get the payment journal, and then I can settle transactions, depending on the rule, right? So I just wanted you to see this option, but I am going to cancel this, and I'm going to run the rule because I want the system to actually do everything for me. I don't want to select anything. I just want things to happen, and I'm done. So let's see, customer settlement, and I am clicking. Okay, something happened. So I guess I matched both. So that's actually is an interesting test that's going to work. Let's read the message because this is where like Microsoft, however, comes in, right? Customer payment journal is generated to the selected bank statement lines. Like, okay, that's expected. Number of voucher posted to the journal. Okay, I have a posted journal. Customer payment journal, again, because I have two statement lines have been matched. Fine, so let's go and find this journal to see what actually happened, because this concept is quite interesting, and I think it's very important to understand what the system is doing before you make a decision if this is going to apply to your system. So let me switch. I'm dealing with journals 40 and 41. This is customer payment journals, and I switched to posted. So let's see at the first one, 640, okay, demo customer, $15, my bank account, right? I have this information. I was doing the bank rec from this bank account, which makes sense. And I'm running for that particular customer, so it was able to find that. That's great. However, it did post the journal all by itself. And for some of you, that might be a concern. There is no option to not post and say like, well, you know, like for these guys, it needs to be posted. For these guys, it can't be posted, because I know that some of you right now are like, what? It got posted without approval, like what? It is. And that's how, if I go back to well, now I don't have the lines. When I click on the generate payment journal, one of the options, if you notice, there was a posting set to yes, and it was grayed out, which means yes, I'm posting. Yes, you cannot change that. It is happening. So in terms of settlement, right, we are supposed to post and settle at the same time. Let me go into these customer account transactions to see, was anything settled, like how it was settled? Because I did not provide any invoice information. I wanted you to see that in my matching rule, I did not have any invoice details. It depends on the information you're getting from your bank. If you have invoice information that your customer is paying for, you can build a rule against the invoice ID, and then your rule will be more tight. In my scenario, it was like, I have open invoices, go settle. So what the system did, let's actually talk about this. This is my customer free text invoice, $15. The balance is 0, right? And if I click on the view settlement to see what happened, it used, I believe, this line, right? Like with my payment. So it did get settled. So I have this information. And then I have this massive invoice for $5,000 and also my settlement. What happened is what you see here, and it's a little bit confusing to understand. Basically, I had a balance on one of my invoices, remaining balance. I have an open balance, and the system used that as well during the settlement. What I'm trying to say is that it will go like you have in the accounts receivable parameters, you have an option to enable automatic settlement, and the system will basically go find the first open invoice and apply the settlement to that. If your rule is not specific to invoice, that's exactly what the system is going to do. It's going to find the first open invoice and apply the payment on that invoice for you and settle and post and everything at the same time. For some of you, it might be like, yay, not doing anything. And for some of you, it will be like, oh my God, and I'm not controlling this and I'm not approving that. And what we tested, so let me tell you in terms of the security, and some of you are thinking segregation of duties, right? I'm right now testing and showing you all of this as a sysadmin. What we tried security roles as treasurer, accounts payable clerk, and accounts receivable clerk. No accountant, no accounting manager, no elevated roles. And I still was able to post a customer payment journal with my name through the bank reconciliation. It let me do that. And then I thought like, well, okay, let's try this. If I have a customer payment journal workflow and I want the system and I want it to go to the workflow, what's going to happen? The execution of the matching rule will fail. Your transactions will not get matched because it will try to post a transaction. It will encounter a blockage because of the workflow, and it will not do that because it can't, it seems like as of right now, it can't trigger the workflow. It sounds like it's one of those examples. If you're interested in this functionality, but you do want a tighter security roles or security process, it might be probably great to submit ideas to Microsoft for them to expand on what you can do. Because as of right now, it seems like the design of the functionality is to proceed with the posting. Going back to the matching rules. So what we talked about, if I click new, on the action, we talked about settle customer invoices, right? Settle customer invoices will generate the payment and settle customer invoices all together in one step. It will basically act as your customer payment journal. Generate customer payments, on the other hand, will just post a payment to your customer. It will not do the settlement, even though you might have an invoice information, all of that. It will just post a payment on account. Maybe that might be a way to separate the postings, right? Because then somebody needs to come in and say like, okay, I see this payment applies to this particular invoice, and do the settlement manually together. So generate customer payment will not settle. It's important to remember and understand it. It will just post the payment, but it will do the same concept. It will just go ahead and post the payment journal for you. The same logic will apply to the generate vendor payment. It will just post a vendor payment. It will go on the vendor account. Again, it will just post the journal. So we're not talking about workflow approval just yet, and it will not settle. When we talk a little bit about roadmap in a few minutes here, as you see, there is no choice to settle vendor invoice. So I believe Microsoft, I'm hoping, I would imagine that they are probably working on this since we have a settle customer invoices section. So I would imagine that at some point they will have a settle vendor invoices where you can record a payment on the journal and process and do the settlement together. When you do a generate customer payment, let me just quickly show you. I believe if I do it here, let's pick one of these companies. On the financial details, I do want to point out one of the toggles when we work with the customers, and I believe it's on the vendor because I'm using the generate customer payment or generate vendor payment. It is important to know that specifically for the customers right now, you have this toggle to automatic customer account matching. And when you hover over, it tells you that how the system will be able to find your customers. Because ultimately, if you think about this, when I do the generate payment journal from the worksheet, I have to provide the customer account. You have to select that. And that also becomes a consideration point because you might have many lines. Do I need to pick each customer account? That is like, what if I have like thousands of lines like that? Then you need to do this 1,000 times, right? So that's also something to think about this. What this thing is offering on the matching rule is that you can ask the system to find your customer account that you received payment for through either customer IBAN information or a customer bank account number. And that's also for some of you would be like, what? We don't store that. Like, we don't do that. Like, what? So this is how the functionality works from Microsoft. Some customers do store this information, some don't. And that's a consideration to make when you look at these rules. What I also wanted to mention is when I go back to a bank statement, let me possibly, if I do this, if I switch, print statement, no, I think it was on the worksheet, my bad, sorry. When I do a print reconciliation statement, right, we used to have a statement that was a little bit like, well, a little bit hard to read. You can enhance your statement by using the electronic reporting. You would need to import that statement, but then you will have Excel download format that you can work with, and you will have a different statement. In terms of what Microsoft is working on, they are working on adding new fields to your matching rules so you can really cover majority or all scenarios that you encounter. They also work on canceling payment journals because as of right now, there is no button for me to cancel payment journals. I can review a journal. Let's say if I click here, right, this is one of my customer journals. I can go to my journal right from here, right, and see the details of the journal. But as soon as I ran my matching rule, it got posted. What if I ran a matching rule on the wrong customer? Like, then what? Like, can I undo that somehow? With the journals, not yet. You will have to manually unreverse that. But Microsoft, the plan is to add a cancel payment journal button at some point. And when you do a reverse, I believe the reverse would work right now just for the voucher transactions because there is no journal really behind that. I believe I'm at the end of my session. I was hoping to finish earlier a little bit to have more questions. If you have any questions, please let me know because I am going to stop sharing my screen right now and go back to the Q&A. While I'm waiting for the questions, if any, if you're interested, I would say basically as a summary, there are a lot of nice features here. Maybe not all of them will be useful for you specifically as your business. However, it's kind of like with Microsoft usual theme. You don't have to use it. The fact that it's available does not mean that you have to use that. You can just not use those rules. You can definitely turn on the feature and just use partially, because to me, like the visual change, the user interface change is a big deal. And it's like now I can actually don't have to struggle to understand what is it that I'm seeing. So I like at least from that perspective. I have one question from Nazim. Entry reference for positive and negative are set up in D365. Entry reference. Nazim, I'm not sure that I'm following. You're talking about this bank statements, like how they're going to be the amounts negative or positive? And we can take this offline. Like, I'm not sure that I'm understanding the question. The debits or credits, you will have them in your bank statements, either a debit or a credit. And with the matching rule, you can work through the setup, because in some of the examples, like especially if we talk about the reversals, there will be a question mark for use the opposite sign type of thing. So I guess we can work or take a look a little bit later on this one. The entry reference in D365, like 192. These are my codes that I understand. Thank you so much for clarifying that. 192, I entered that. Again, this depends on what you're having. You can use the bank statement transaction code. Most of my rules are configured through the bank statement transaction code. Entry reference is just me typing things in. So if your bank provides you this information or some other information, you can use that instead, right? It really, like, you really need to take your bank statement and see what is it that you have there. Electronic reporting needs to be configured for bank statement to import. Yes, that is true if you're going to import them, right? Because you can do the Excel import if you don't want to do the Excel import, because it's kind of nice that you can, but then you have to sort of like, you can't really automate that, right? Somebody needs to manually push the data management import project in. If you are going to do the automatic import, you will have to first of all download the BI2 file, and that would be electronic reporting. And then import, if you're going to do, you can do manual import, right? I can click the button import here and just call my bank statement file. I can browse it and pick it up from my SharePoint folder myself. But if I want the system to bring this in, then I can configure a batch job, so it will just do this particular step of picking and bringing in for me through the batch. That would be also additional configurations to do that talk between SharePoint and D365. Any other questions? And I'm a client care support lead. If you have any questions, please submit a support ticket and we will talk through this and we will work with your particular situation, because we can always say like, hey, you know what, I don't like this automatic posting, or I very much do like this automatic posting. Can we see how it's going to work for us? Everything will be client specific, right? Because depending what kind of bank you have, depending what information you get, depending where you are in your bank account reconciliation process, what is it that you like? It will be very, very much tailored. Bank statement import SharePoint will utilize Power Apps. To be honest with you, I need to double check if this is going to utilize Power Apps, because I believe, I'm not sure that it will. I think it's going to. Well, let me get back to you, Nazim, because I don't remember the functionality between the SharePoint and bringing it into D365. I mentioned Power Apps to bring your statements into the SharePoint folder. So you can grab it somehow from there, and that would definitely be Power Automation. But let me confirm about D365 through SharePoint. Is it some form of a flow, or it's just a direct connection, right? Like we have a share, like a file folder sharing on the SharePoint. Any other questions? Well, we're 5 minutes over. If you're interested, please let me know. We will work with you and see how we can utilize that. Thank you so much. I appreciate your joining us and have a wonderful day.